Welcome to Old Iron Machine Works. We recently acquired this lathe. We did a little horse trading, and it's a 14 by 40 lathe, gap bed lathe that came with a 12-inch 3-jaw scroll chuck made in China. I have been wanting to switch over and put a larger chuck on the lathe that I use on a daily basis, and the 12-inch chuck was way too big for this lathe, so we got the gap put back in it, and then we got the 8-inch chuck back on it. And this video will just be modifying the mounting plate for me to put it on the Regal LeBlanc 19-inch lathe, and not really sure China chuck, not really sure the quality, didn't know really what to expect, but I thought it'd be worth a try and see what happens. These are the parts that were made up in order to put that 12-inch chuck on the other smaller lathe. I believe that's a D15, I think it is. And what I have is an L1 spindle, so I will be machining that adapter plate basically to fit the other spacer plate. Here I just got it guarded the best I can with some tin foil and some Scotch-Brite. Anytime cast iron, this stuff's just flying everywhere and making a mess. I normally like to use a micrometer on things like this, but there wasn't enough lip to get the micrometer on it to get a good measurement. So I'm using my good old trusted calipers. Here I gotta make sure that I undercut this enough to where this little radius doesn't bottom out and hit the hole it goes into. Doesn't really have the edge knocked off of it. So what's critical is this has got to be flat, and that surface needs to pilot. This little area there, I need to go in and machine that out a little bit and get some clearance. If you look here, the very tip of it is real close to that area. So just to make sure I don't contact there, I'm going to go in and relieve that area out. All right, here it's time to start cleaning up some of the chips from the cast. The thing I don't like about cast, it's actually kind of fun to machine other than chips go everywhere. But it's not the heavy chips that are the issue. It's the really fine powdered stuff that mixes in the oil, and when it gets on the ways, the wipers just don't take care of it. And that seems to be the most abrasive, as far as on your equipment. That's the only downside of it. Here, if you've watched my videos, I really like the bead blasters. And the blasting gives you a little bit of a frosted look. And then what I do is I just run over real lightly with a worn out pad to find high spots. You can look around the 0 right there, and you can see when they stamped it, they created a high spot in the middle and around it. And the next clip will show it. Here I've just ran a stone over it a little bit, and it's very obvious high spots. Normally that's not a big deal, but when you're trying to mount up a chuck, every little bit makes a difference. So I just go in there and you just kind of file it out until it starts blending and feathering in, and then you pretty much know the high spot's gone. Steve Summers recently has been showing his new drill press. It's identical to this one, except rather than being badged Wilton, his is badged Dual. Otherwise, it's the exact same drill press. They're excellent. I found this one years ago and picked it up for work. And then I also have a couple of them at home. And in my opinion, it's hard to beat a gearhead drill press. Here I'm just drilling the hole for the bolt. It takes 3/8 bolts, so that's a 5/16 drill bit. I want to point out, I didn't get it on film, but before I started mounting any of this up, I took a stone and just kind of ran around on the spindle taper, just make sure there's no little nicks or anything in it. And then on the inside of the L1, ran a stone also. The whole idea is repeatability. You'd like to be able to take the chuck off, put it back on, and know it's going to be accurate. And if you got any nick or anything in there, you may not be the same every time. Okay, we already checked this, and we knew we had 3,000 soft. That's not a big deal, because that there, I just make a skim cut. What I was hoping for is a pilot area here that fits tight in the chuck. If it was off much, I couldn't really do much about it, since it was already machined and I'm using the existing deal. But very happy about that. I'll show you on the dial indicator. For what I'm doing with this chuck, it is a China 12-inch 3-jaw chuck, so I have no idea how accurate the chuck itself is going to be, but I can totally live with that. Another nice thing about the glass bead finish, it's very obvious, when you are machining it, where you've hit and where you haven't. Okay, here I'd like to say, boy, am I good. But the truth of the matter is, any lathe, if you are making a machine cut and it doesn't run perfect, it's time to start looking into another lathe or tighten your spindle bearings or do something. Now here I'm just kind of stoning it, to bolt it up and see how it runs. I wasn't going to spend a whole lot of time and effort disassembling the chuck until I see how well it performs. It could be nothing more than another vise I bolt to the one of the workbenches. I'm hoping it ends up running nice and true, and at that point, if it does, I'll take it apart down the road and really give it a good cleaning. But for right now, I just want to see how the China chuck's going to perform. Now the person that machined this plate, it is, as you can see, pretty snug going into the chuck. Which means that if I ever need to do a little fudging, I could still machine a little bit of it off and still have it pilot just fine. Now here, the body is running about 1.5 thousandths out, which, which tells me that the body is not running perfectly true with the boss that the plate centers on. Um, but that doesn't mean anything. The outside body isn't the main test. Okay, here's the first test. This is an old wrist pin, a good used one. That generally they run pretty accurate, but you can see the wear pattern on that one. But so far, I'm very happy with the run out on that. Here I just loosened it up and kind of spun it a little bit, and to be running less than 1,000ths on a 12-inch 3-jaw scroll chuck, I'm very impressed. Okay, here I got a smaller wrist pin in there that I'm trying out. Once again, it is a used wrist pin, but no real wear pattern on it. And generally, wrist pins come in pretty accurate. And as you can see, that one's running, thousands and a half, which is pretty good. Okay, I went ahead and pulled the top jaws off and cleaned them, blasted them just to make sure that they were fitting up tight. And I thought to give it a good, a really good fair comparison. Let's just make sure everything's nice and clean. Here I'm just taking a file, nothing rocket science here. If you want to see if something's hard, just take a file to it. And obviously, they do have some hardness to them, but it files actually fairly easy, which I kind of expected that out of a chuck made in China. I don't know if China makes chucks hardened. I'm sure they probably do. But if I had to knock anything that I've seen so far about this chuck, I would say, okay, the jaws aren't, super hard. Here, this is a Bison off my Bison 10-inch, and it just skates right off. I mean, it barely polishes an area, but, very hard. So, if I'm going to make any kind of comparison, I'm comparing it to a Bison, and, yes, the China jaws are not as hard as the Bison. Here I no sooner get the chuck on and I have my first kind of a rush emergency job. I needed to make 24 standoffs for lift and eyes for a very large Yumbacher engine. We got the new engine in that we got unloaded at the yard, and then we found out that the engine that we were going to be pulling was missing the standoffs. So anyway, here I'm putting the truck to work. I started with 10 foot worth of 30 millimeter hex 4140 and needed to drill them out, and they ultimately got 20 millimeter 2.5 thread on one side and 22 millimeter 2.5 thread on the other end. Here it took a big crane to get this motor out of a container. It came on a 20-foot container open top where we had to lift it out of the top. See the yellow lifting eyes right there? Right underneath, you would have seen the standoffs. The standoffs I'm making is for the engine. This is replacing. As far as the 12-inch 3-jaw China chuck, I am very pleased with it, and it will be a everyday user for me. Anyway, I appreciate you guys taking the time to check out the video.